Welcome to the Darkling Radio, a channel where every story drags you deeper into the shadows. From chilling true encounters to unsettling fictional nightmares, we bring you immersive first-person horror told in a way that feels disturbingly real. Turn down the lights, put on your headphones, and step into the dark with us. Maya Thornton was used to the attention that came with her online presence, but one anonymous subscriber felt different from the rest. His comments weren't flattering or suggestive, they were disturbingly precise, describing details of her life she had never shown on camera. When he mentioned the way her hallway light flickered at night and the pattern on her bedsheets, Maya realized she wasn't just being watched online. Someone had already stepped into her real world. I started my ONLYFANS account as a joke, but the joke turned into something I depended on faster than I ever expected. The first week I uploaded a few harmless photos, testing the waters, and money trickled in slowly, almost as if people were curious but not yet committed. By the end of the month, though, my subscriber count had tripled. I wasn't posting anything outrageous, just suggestive pictures with careful angles, but the audience grew. Most of the subscribers never said a word. They paid their fee, maybe hit a like here and there, and then stayed quiet. That was fine with me. Silence was easy to handle. Silence meant safety. But then one account started standing out. The username was just a strange string of numbers. Faceless, no profile picture, no history. At first, I didn't think much of it. Bots were common, and I figured it was just another one of those, except this account commented on everything I posted. Not just a quick hot or nice but long, strange comments about details no one else noticed. He described the way my hair looked in the reflection of a mirror, the exact curve of my arm in a picture I thought was too dark to see clearly, the faint design of the curtains in the background of one photo. His comments weren't sexual like the others. They were personal, almost observational, and that unnerved me more than the usual crude remarks ever could. I told myself not to think about it. Maybe he was just overly attentive, one of those people with too much time on their hands. But late one night, I uploaded a short video, nothing special, just me lounging on my bed in dim light. When I played it back before posting, I noticed something that made my chest tighten. In the reflection of the window behind me, there was the faintest shape, like a blurred outline of a person standing in the corner. I stared at it for a long time, zooming in, convincing myself it was nothing more than shadows, maybe a jacket hanging oddly, maybe just a trick of the low light. Shadows could play tricks, especially when you wanted to see something. That's what I told myself. I posted it anyway. The money was too tempting, and I couldn't let paranoia stop me. By morning, the same account with a string of numbers had left a comment. This time it wasn't about my appearance. It said, "The light in your room makes you glow." Something about the way it was worded made my stomach churn. It felt like more than a compliment, it felt like an observation made by someone who was there. I stared at the comment for a long time, wondering if I should block him, but a part of me hesitated. He hadn't crossed any clear line yet, and blocking paying subscribers felt like losing money. I couldn't afford that. That night I tried to sleep, but my eyes kept darting to the corners of my room. Every shadow looked like a figure waiting to be caught. I lay awake for hours, heart beating too hard for rest. When sleep finally came, it was shallow, restless, filled with a constant sensation that I wasn't alone. The next day, I woke up groggy and checked my messages. He had sent me one. It wasn't sexual. It wasn't even particularly long. It simply said, "You look so peaceful when you sleep." I froze. My photos had never shown me sleeping. I had never recorded myself like that. No one should have seen me like that. My phone slipped in my hand as I scrolled back through my posts, convincing myself I must have uploaded something I forgot about. But there was nothing. My throat felt tight, my chest heavy. My eyes darted around the room again, trying to find what I must have missed before. If there was a camera hidden somewhere, I couldn't see it. I checked under the bed, inside the closet, behind picture frames, even unscrewed the light fixtures, but I found nothing. Still, the dread wouldn't leave me. That night, I couldn't resist replaying the video I had posted again. The reflection in the window, that vague shape in the corner, stared back at me. This time I paused the frame and adjusted the brightness. The figure sharpened slightly, still hazy, still easy to dismiss if I wanted to, but now undeniably human in shape. It stood there in my room, behind me, while I smiled unknowingly into the camera. I sat frozen, the silence of my apartment pressing against my ears. I wanted to tell myself it was nothing, just my imagination running wild. But even then, I couldn't ignore the fact that someone had described me sleeping when I had never shown it. My body tensed as I slowly turned my head toward the corner of the room, the same one from the reflection in the video. The corner was empty now, but it felt wrong, as if the air there was thicker than the rest of the room, as if something invisible was still standing there, watching, waiting for me to look away again. I tried to convince myself it was paranoia. I told myself I was exhausted, that lack of sleep made everything look worse than it was. But the more I repeated those excuses, the less convincing they sounded. The message about me sleeping gnawed at me all day. It wasn't just creepy, it was impossible. Nobody had access to that image unless someone was inside my apartment. I kept replaying it in my mind, hearing the words again and again until I felt sick. The next morning, I awoke to another notification. My hands trembled before I even unlocked the phone. It was him again. The message read, "You curl up like a child when you dream." My chest tightened and I dropped the phone onto the blanket. I sat frozen, staring at it as if the screen might reveal how he knew that detail. I couldn't stop imagining someone standing silently in the corner of my room while I slept, studying every movement. I wanted to tear my apartment apart again, searching for a hidden device. But the thought that I might actually find one was worse than not knowing at all. Instead, I left the apartment. I needed air. Outside, the world looked too normal for the way I felt. People bustled past with coffee cups. Dogs barked on leashes. Cars honked. No one else seemed aware of how fragile everything suddenly was. But the more I walked, the stronger the sensation became that someone was following me. Every few minutes I glanced behind. Nothing obvious. Just strangers. A man with a grocery bag. A teenager scrolling on his phone. A mother pushing a stroller. But whenever I turned forward again, the prickling at the back of my neck returned, sharper than before, like eyes locked on me. I ducked into a cafe, ordered something just for the excuse to sit down, and pressed my back against the wall so I could see the whole room. Every person who entered looked suspicious. My mind tried to attach the faceless account to one of them. Maybe the man in the baseball cap. Maybe the woman who kept looking at her phone. I stayed longer than necessary, drinking a coffee that had gone cold, but eventually I forced myself out again. Back home, the walls felt too close. I couldn't concentrate on anything except the silence that pressed in around me. I left the TV running for background noise, but every flicker of light from the screen made me think of shadows moving where they shouldn't be. I told myself to calm down, to stop feeding the fear. It was probably nothing more than some obsessive fan trying to mess with my head. That was possible, wasn't it? A hacker, maybe. Someone clever enough to bluff. By nightfall, my exhaustion finally dragged me toward bed. I left the lamp on this time, unable to trust the dark, but even with the light, my body stayed tense, listening for the faintest noise. I tossed and turned until at some point, against my will, I slipped into sleep. When I woke up, the first thing I heard was the buzz of a notification. I didn't want to look. My stomach knotted so tightly it hurt, but my hand moved on its own, reaching for the phone. The message glowed on the screen. "Check under your bed." For a moment I couldn't breathe. The words stared back at me. Simple, casual, but they made the entire room feel poisonous. My body refused to move. The thought of leaning over the side of the mattress and shining a light into that narrow, dark space made my skin crawl. Every horror I'd ever imagined seemed to be waiting there, inches away from my face, but fear mixed with a desperate need to know. I grabbed my flashlight, forcing my shaking hands to click it on. Slowly, I leaned down, my chest pressed to the mattress, and aimed the light into the darkness beneath the bed. My breath caught. It wasn't empty. Against the wall, taped carefully to the frame, was a small black device with a blinking light, a camera. My hand shot forward, ripping it out, and I hurled it across the room. The plastic cracked against the floor, scattering pieces. My pulse roared in my ears, and every shadow in the room seemed to close in tighter. Someone had put that there. Someone had been watching me, not just through a window reflection but inside my bedroom, hidden only inches away from where I slept every night. I sat on the floor staring at the broken pieces, my breathing ragged, and then my phone buzzed again. Another message appeared on the screen. This one was worse than all the rest. It said, "I told you not to break my things." I sat frozen on the floor, staring at the shattered pieces of the hidden camera. My heart thudded painfully, each beat echoing through my skull like a warning drum. I wanted to scream, to run out of the apartment and never come back, but I couldn't move. The message still glowed on my phone. That eerie sentence burned into my vision. He called it his things, as if he had some kind of ownership over the object, over me, over my home. I forced myself to stand, my knees wobbling so badly I almost collapsed again. I grabbed the phone with trembling hands and deleted the ONLYFANS app, as if cutting it off would somehow cut him out of my life. But deep down I knew it wasn't that simple. He had already crossed into my real world. The account was only the surface. I switched off the phone completely, tossed it on the counter and sat in the corner of the room with my arms wrapped tightly around myself. For hours I couldn't move. Every tiny creak in the walls, every faint sound from outside made me flinch. My body felt wired, too tense to rest, but my eyelids drooped against my will. I tried fighting it, but sleep clawed its way in. My last conscious thought before I slipped under was the image of that camera taped beneath my bed, blinking silently while I dreamed. When I woke, the room was dim with the gray light of early morning. For a second I convinced myself it was all a nightmare, that maybe I'd just imagined everything. But then I saw the broken camera pieces still scattered across the floor. The sight pulled me back into reality with a sickening weight. I turned on my phone hesitantly, praying for silence. But the moment the screen lit up, I saw a notification waiting. My throat tightened as I opened it. The same account had tipped me an obscene amount of money. Attached was a note. "Don't break the toys I leave you." I dropped the phone as if it burned me. My whole body trembled, a sour taste filling my mouth. He knew, he always knew. It wasn't just about watching anymore, it was about control. He wanted me to know he had power over me, that nothing I did would stop him. Panic shoved me into motion. I tore apart the apartment, checking every corner, every outlet, every vent. My fingers bled from pulling at screws and prying open fixtures, but I found nothing else. Only silence and emptiness, which somehow felt worse because I knew there had to be more. That camera wasn't the only one. By afternoon, my body ached with exhaustion. I collapsed onto the couch, barely able to think. That's when another notification arrived, but this time it wasn't about me. My breath stopped as I read the words on the screen. She won TB checking on you anymore. For a moment I didn't understand. Then my thoughts snapped to my neighbor, the elderly woman who lived down the hall. She was always kind, always quick to smile when we passed each other. Sometimes I'd catch her glancing at me with gentle concern, as though she noticed how tired I looked. The thought of her not being around anymore clawed at my chest. I sat still, trying to convince myself it was just another sick game. Maybe he was bluffing, trying to scare me into believing he had control of everything. But a quiet dread pushed through my denial. What if it wasn't a bluff? What if he wasn't just watching me but watching everyone around me too? The hallway outside my door was silent that night, too silent. Usually I could hear the faint hum of her television through the walls, the muffled noise of late-night shows. But there was nothing. The silence stretched out like something unnatural, pulling at my nerves. I pressed my ear to my own door, straining to hear anything, but the air was still. I tried to sleep, but it was impossible. Every second that passed made the quiet heavier, pressing against my chest like weight I couldn't shake off. Finally, unable to bear it, I unlocked my door and peeked out into the hallway. The lights flickered faintly overhead, buzzing in intervals, but the stretch of corridor was empty. Her door was closed, the space around it darker than it should have been. I told myself to turn back, to lock my own door and forget about it. But my feet betrayed me, carrying me slowly toward her apartment. My hand hovered above her doorknob for what felt like an eternity. The air smelled faintly metallic, sharp in my nose. I didn't open it. I couldn't. But as I turned back to my own apartment, I thought I saw movement at the far end of the hallway, a shadow slipping just out of sight, silent and purposeful. My body froze where I stood, my eyes locked on the darkness at the end of the corridor, but nothing else moved. When I got back inside, I pushed a chair against the door, barricading myself in. My phone buzzed again minutes later, though I didn't need to check it to know who it was from. Against my will, I picked it up. Another message stared back at me. She's with me now. Don't worry, I'll take care of you next. I didn't want to believe the message. I told myself it was just another cruel attempt to scare me, another psychological trick to tighten his grip. But the silence in the hallway weighed on me heavier than the words themselves. My neighbor's presence had always been a comfort in ways I hadn't noticed before. Her television murmuring through the walls, her footsteps shuffling at odd hours, her faint humming when she watered her plants by the window. Now it was gone. The quiet was wrong. I paced my apartment, unable to shake the thought that he wasn't lying. I kept telling myself not to get involved, that I should mind my own business, but the image of her warm smile wouldn't leave me. The metallic smell I noticed near her door gnawed at me, seeping into my imagination, twisting into possibilities I didn't want to see. I tried distracting myself with the TV, blasting the volume, but every shadow in the room felt like it stretched too far, bending toward me as if pulled by something unseen. Hours passed, but sleep never came. My head throbbed, my body ached from exhaustion, yet my mind stayed sharp with dread. Finally, when the clock pushed past midnight, I cracked. I couldn't take the silence any longer. Grabbing my phone as a makeshift flashlight, I stepped into the hallway. The air outside my door felt heavier, colder. The overhead bulbs buzzed faintly, some flickering with weak light. Her door loomed just a few steps away, ordinary but suffocating in its stillness. I stood in front of it, my heart hammering so loudly I was sure the sound carried down the corridor. I knocked softly. No response. I tried again. Louder. Nothing. My fingers hovered over the doorknob, trembling. I wanted to turn back, to retreat to the safety of my apartment, but I knew safety was already an illusion. The knob turned easily. The door wasn't locked. It opened with a slow creak, the sound echoing down the silent hallway. Inside, the air was stale and sour. The smell hit me instantly, stronger than before, metallic and rotting, heavy enough to make me gag. I lifted my shirt to cover my mouth as I stepped inside. The apartment was dark, curtains drawn tight, not a single lamp on. My phone's glow spilled over dusty furniture and a carpet that had been vacuumed in weeks. Everything felt wrong. I called silently in my mind for her to appear, for her to shuffle out of the kitchen and scold me for intruding, but the apartment answered only with silence. My light caught something on the living room floor, a dark streak smeared across the tiles. My chest constricted as I followed it, each step like walking deeper into a nightmare. The streak led me down the narrow hallway toward her bedroom. The closer I got, the stronger the smell became. My stomach turned, but I kept moving, as if drawn forward by something beyond my control. Her bedroom door was half open, the darkness inside thicker than the rest of the apartment. I pushed it open with a trembling hand. The bed was neatly made, the blankets tucked tightly in place. For a moment, I almost believed nothing was wrong, but then my light shifted lower, toward the floor, and I saw it. An arm, pale and stiff, stretched out from beneath the bed frame, fingers curled in unnatural angles. My breath caught in my throat. I staggered backward, slamming into the doorframe. My hands shook so violently the light jittered across the walls. I couldn't make a sound. I couldn't move. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body felt paralyzed. Then my phone buzzed. The sudden vibration jolted me to life. With shaking hands, I raised it, the screen lighting up in the darkness. A new message appeared. It was a photo. My vision blurred with terror as I looked at it. It was me, a picture of me standing exactly where I was now, in her bedroom doorway, the pale arm visible on the floor beside me. The timestamp showed it had been taken seconds ago. I dropped the phone, its screen cracking against the floor. My pulse roared in my ears as I stumbled backward into the hallway, nearly tripping over myself. Someone had been in the apartment with me. Someone had been close enough to take that photo in real time. I bolted, slamming her door shut and sprinting back to mine. I shoved the chair against my own door again, my breath ragged, my whole body shaking uncontrollably. The apartment pressed in around me, the shadows thicker than ever. And though my phone lay shattered behind her door, I swore I still felt the vibration in my pocket, faint and steady, like a message waiting for me to read it. I slammed myself against the door and held it shut long after the chair was already wedged in place, as though sheer force could keep the world outside from bleeding into my apartment. My heart pounded so violently it hurt, a dull ache spreading through my chest with every desperate breath. I had seen too much. The pale arm under the bed, the picture sent seconds after it was taken, the proof that he was there, not just watching through a screen, not just some distant subscriber. He was close enough to breathe the same air as me. I wanted to run, but where would I go? The thought of leaving the apartment felt just as dangerous as staying inside it. He could be anywhere. Outside meant open ground, shadows that stretched forever, places he could hide. At least here I had walls, a barrier, no matter how fragile. So I sat in the corner with my knees pulled to my chest, rocking slightly, my eyes wide in the dim light. The chair pressed against the door wasn't enough, but it was all I had. Hours passed in a blur. Every sound made me flinch. Pipes groaning, neighbors shifting above, cars far below, all twisted into evidence that he was near. My mind replayed the photo over and over. The angle wasn't from across the room. It was closer, lower, as if someone crouched just a few feet behind me while I stood frozen in her doorway. I couldn't erase the sensation of invisible eyes boring into me even now. Eventually, exhaustion dragged me under. I don't know when I drifted off, but when I woke, my apartment was bathed in the pale gray of early morning. For one disorienting moment, I felt relief. Then I noticed my phone glowing faintly on the floor next to me. I hadn't touched it since last night. It was supposed to be shattered on the other side of my neighbor's door. My stomach turned to ice. My hands shook as I picked it up. The screen was intact, smooth, flawless, and on it, a new notification blinked. I forced myself to open it. It was a video. My finger hovered above the screen before it played on its own, as if responding to his will rather than mine. The footage showed me lying in bed, tossing and turning restlessly. For a split second I tried to convince myself it was old, recorded before I found the camera. But then I noticed details. The sheets were the same ones I had changed only yesterday. The position of the lamp was exactly how I had left it last night. It wasn't old, it was last night. The angle chilled me more than anything else. The camera wasn't under the bed or across the room. It was above me, looking straight down, as if someone had stood directly over my body while I slept. My mouth went dry. My entire body went numb. I dropped the phone, but the sound of the video kept playing from the floor, muffled but clear enough to hear the faint rhythm of my own breathing in the recording. I scrambled back, pressing into the wall, staring at the device as if it were alive. Then another message appeared, sharp and simple. You can stop posting, but I'll never stop watching. My breath hitched. I slammed my hands over my ears, but the buzzing sound of another notification vibrated through the floor, louder in my head than anything else. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't resist. My hand reached out like it belonged to someone else, picking up the phone. The new message was a photo. This time, it showed me right now. Knees pulled to my chest, back against the wall, hands pressed over my ears. The timestamp was seconds old. The phone slipped from my hands again, clattering onto the floor. I pressed myself harder against the wall, my chest heaving. My eyes darted around the room wildly, desperate to catch movement, to see where he was. Every corner seemed too dark, every shadow too heavy. The air felt suffocating, thick with someone else's breath. That was 3 nights ago. Since then, I haven't slept. Every time my eyes shut, I see the angle of that video, feel the weight of someone standing above me. I keep every light on, but the shadows grow longer anyway. I haven't left my apartment, I can't. I know he's waiting. Tonight though, something's different. The buzzing started again, faint but steady, coming from the bed. My phone wasn't on the counter where I left it. It wasn't even in my hand. I followed the sound with trembling fingers, pulling back the blanket slowly, my skin crawling with dread. The vibration was coming from under my pillow. When I lifted it, my phone lit up in the dark. A single message filled the screen. "Don't turn around.